tea because our girl, Alex Eala, just set the Wimbledon grass on fire. And your heart rate is about to go through the roof. If you thought the British summer was unpredictable, wait until you hear how Alex completely turned the tables on Australia's Maya Joint in the second round. We are officially witnessing history, and trust me, you'll want to savor every single juicy statistic from this.
Ever seen a tennis tournament accidentally turn into a Filipino family reunion? Wimbledon probably expected strawberries, polite applause, and perfect grass. Then Alex Eala showed up, and suddenly it felt like half the Philippines had found center court on Google Maps. Meanwhile, Burmoy Maim, Baumer Maim, world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka was fighting pressure, while Eala was collecting fans faster than Wimbledon could find bigger courts. So how did one 20-year-old turn the sport's classiest tournament into the loudest party of the summer?
Hi everybody, thank you so much for the support. I'm into round 3 and I hope I will see you the day after tomorrow. Hi!
I was thinking about this during the match, that even if they don't love me per se, we have a shared love for our culture and for our nation, and I think that's really beautiful.
Now we know how passionate the Filipino fans are when it comes to sport. What's it like having that sort of support behind you at your matches and when you're playing?
It's so surreal to think that, that all of these people are so invested in my journey.
The strangest victory at Wimbledon this year happened long before anyone struck a forehand on center court. It was not recorded on a scoreboard, it did not come with ranking points, and no trophy was handed out for it.
Know those rooms where you just go in and you smash everything? Probably I'll spend a whole day tomorrow over there destroying stuff. Maybe it will help, maybe not. No emotions. Just want to quit tennis right now, but we'll see. We'll see in a few days. Hopefully I'll get back on track mentally.
One of the best players in the world just admitted she wanted to quit tennis. Sabalenka opened up after her Roland Garros loss about how mentally exhausting the sport.
Instead, it unfolded in the walkways, outside practice courts, and across social media feeds, where one young player managed to transform one of the most traditional sporting events in the world into something that looked remarkably like a national celebration.
The first time I paid real attention to her, not just notice her, but actually stopped what I was doing and watched. I was struck not by her power, not by her technique, not by any of the things that scouts and coaches talk about when they describe a prospect. What struck me was her composure. I mean, there's a particular kind of stillness that the greatest players have, a quality that you cannot teach and cannot manufacture, where the bigger the moment gets, the quieter they become.
Wimbledon has spent generations teaching tennis fans to whisper politely between points. Yet suddenly, thousands of Filipino voices arrived carrying enough energy to make the oldest tournament in the sport feel like it had discovered an entirely new audience.
What the actual fuck did I just watch? Won 30-love in the second set for Sabalenka, and then not injured, not hurt, not tired, forgets how to play tennis, loses 13 of 14 games. What? It was Sabalenka straight to the scratch gamblers. That's a bad beat in itself. But what the hell happened? Schneider played great. She was hitting a lot of lines. But every time, the racket was in Sabalenka's hands. It was
That remarkable shift did not happen overnight, although it might have appeared that way to casual observers. People who had only recently discovered Alex Eala saw enormous crowds, endless Philippine flags, and an atmosphere that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Those who had followed her journey from the junior ranks knew something very different. They had watched a steady rise built through years of patient development, difficult losses, surprising victories, and an ever-growing community of supporters who believed they were witnessing the beginning of something far bigger than one promising tennis career. One statistic from the beginning of the season quietly hinted that the tennis world was about to receive a wake-up call. During the Australian Open, official YouTube uploads of players' pre-tournament press conferences produced an unexpected leaderboard. Conventional wisdom suggested that the biggest stars would naturally attract the biggest audiences. Her press conference attracted roughly 71,000 views, while several established champions, including the reigning world #1, drew only a fraction of that audience. On paper, those numbers looked almost impossible to explain. Rankings suggested one story, but public curiosity was clearly telling another. Tennis has always relied on statistics to predict almost everything, from match outcomes to tournament seedings. Yet statistics sometimes struggle to measure excitement, and excitement was becoming Alex Eala's greatest asset.
Let's be real for a second. The match did not start like a walk in the park. It was like trying to find parking in downtown Manila on a Friday afternoon. Intense, nerve-wracking, and a little bit sweaty. Nerves and tension were flying everywhere, and Alex was visibly struggling to find her rhythm on the slick grass. Meanwhile, Maya Joint came out swinging like she had somewhere else to be. Mus Mario Sepp, the Australian broke Alex's very first service game and raced to it.
The fascinating part was that those online numbers were not inflated by celebrity gossip or manufactured controversy. Fans simply wanted to hear her speak. They wanted to understand the personality behind the rapidly improving game, and the young woman carrying the hopes of an entire nation that had never experienced anything quite like this in professional tennis. That kind of attention cannot be manufactured through marketing campaigns alone. It grows because people feel emotionally invested, and emotional investment is considerably more powerful than advertising budgets. It seemed like a perfectly reasonable scheduling decision based on rankings and experience. Within hours, however, that decision looked as outdated as bringing a wooden racket to modern Wimbledon. Thousands of Filipino supporters poured through Melbourne Park, hoping to watch history unfold. Long queues stretched across the grounds, creating bottlenecks that surprised tournament staff, television commentators, and even longtime journalists who had covered Grand Slam tennis for decades. The crowd became so overwhelming that moving around the venue became increasingly difficult as supporters patiently waited for a glimpse of their newest sporting hero.
Most players, even talented ones, even players who go on to have long, successful careers, they don't have that. They fight against the moment, and they try to manage their nerves, control their breathing, use the mental tools they've been given, and those tools work, but they're tools. What Alex has isn't a tool, it's something that was already there. And when I saw it, I recognized it because I've only seen it a handful of times in my life in players whose names you know very.
Even experienced broadcasters admitted they had underestimated what they were witnessing. Former British #1 Anne Keothavong, speaking during BBC coverage, openly questioned why tournament officials had assigned Eala to such a small court. It was not criticism designed to embarrass organizers. It sounded more like genuine disbelief that experienced schedulers had failed to recognize the scale of her following. When someone who has spent years inside professional tennis expresses that level of surprise, people throughout the sport tend to pay attention. The Australian Open itself eventually acknowledged the situation with admirable honesty. Tournament officials publicly admitted they had learned an important lesson from the experience. That realization carried enormous significance because tennis has traditionally measured importance through rankings above everything else. If you climbed higher in the rankings, you received better courts, more television coverage, and greater promotional attention. Eala was quietly forcing organizers to recognize another factor that numbers alone could not fully explain. She had become one of the sport's biggest attractions, regardless of where her ranking happened to sit.
I really do work hard, and I do my best to represent my country and the best of my country. And it's nice that, even I was thinking about this during the match, that even if they don't love me per se, we have a shared love for our culture and for our nation, and I think that's.
And she's far from the only one. It opens up a broader conversation about mental health within the sport. Osaka stepped away to prioritize her mental health. Anisimova took a break because of burnout. Rublev has spoken openly about
As the season progressed, her tennis began catching up with the extraordinary attention surrounding her. Plenty of athletes experience brief moments of popularity before results expose the difference between hype and genuine quality. Eala refused to follow that familiar script. Instead, she steadily produced victories that made her growing reputation increasingly difficult to dismiss. Her grass court campaign became the perfect demonstration of that evolution. Before arriving at Wimbledon, She competed in Birmingham and delivered the kind of performance every young professional dreams about. Match after match, she adapted beautifully to one of tennis's trickiest surfaces, displaying confidence that seemed to increase with every round. Grass rewards aggressive movement, intelligent shot selection, and emotional composure, and Eala appeared increasingly comfortable with each challenge presented to her. The reward arrived in the championship match, where she defeated Nikola Bartunkova to capture her first professional grass court title. She was arriving as a champion. Yet the trophy ceremony revealed something even more memorable than the final itself. Standing before the crowd, she could easily have delivered the familiar collection of thank yous that usually accompanies championship speeches.
So, by the way, I'm just sharing on the screen. This is the ghost of Eastbourne that we have all been referring to. This is the moment that Maya Joint last year beat Alex Eala in a deciding set tiebreak. And Alex Eala had championship points. And she did so with a beautiful backhand winner that day. And look at her fall to the ground there. Painful moment for Alex. She said that after that match, she cried a lot. But today, she got the win to prevail in Wimbledon. So she is into the next round where she will play Iga Swiatek.
She certainly appreciated her coaches, her training team, and everyone who had supported her development. Instead, her thoughts immediately drifted toward home. Speaking in Tagalog, she thanked her fellow Filipinos and shared a message that resonated far beyond the tennis court. She explained that home is defined by people rather than geography. It was a simple sentiment, yet its emotional impact proved enormous. For years, the conversation had focused almost entirely on Alex Eala herself. Following Birmingham, the conversation expanded to include everyone standing behind her. Her supporters were no longer simply watching history unfold from the sidelines. Earlier during the grass court season in Berlin, she produced one of the biggest victories of her young career by defeating world number 2 Aryna Sabalenka. Beating one of the sport's very best players instantly changes how opponents prepare for you. It also changes how commentators, tournament directors, and fellow professionals discuss your future. Instead of treating her as an exciting prospect, analysts increasingly began describing her as someone capable of making deep runs at the biggest tournaments.
The top seed here at Birmingham is Alexandra Eala, and the Philippine star did not disappoint. There were so many of her fans came to support her, and Alex Eala comfortably won a 6-love, 6-2. It felt like she'd been playing on this surface for years, but post-match I caught up with her in the courtside interview, and she told me she's working really hard on improving her grass court game and staying low to the ground. She was also surprised that she would have so many fans supporting her here.
She followed that landmark victory by advancing all the way to the semifinals, proving the Rybakina win had not been a fortunate afternoon where everything happened to click. Although Linda Noskova eventually ended her run, the broader message remained unmistakable. Alex Eala had developed into a genuine threat on grass, precisely the surface awaiting her at Wimbledon. While Eala's confidence continued growing through victories, another storyline was unfolding around the player, occupying the very top of the rankings. Aryna Sabalenka entered Wimbledon carrying enormous expectations, but she also arrived carrying difficult questions about recent disappointments and her emotional response to them. Instead of spending her media appearances discussing tactics, preparation, or championship ambitions, she found herself repeatedly addressing comments made after her painful French Open exit. Her honesty earned widespread respect, but it also ensured that her Wimbledon build-up became dominated by conversations about resilience rather than momentum. The contrast between the two players could hardly have been more striking. One woman spent the week explaining herself, while the other spent the week embracing an entire nation that seemed determined to accompany her every step of the journey.
Every time! Just when you think this tournament doesn't make any less sense. What the hell was this match? I've never seen Sabalenka crash and burn like that. Like, it was just a domination. It was some of the worst tennis I've ever seen from Sabalenka ever. It is the worst tennis I've ever seen from Sabalenka ever. I didn't think there was a possibility that Sabalenka had it in her bag to lose 10 straight games to Deanna Schneider.
Neither storyline was manufactured. Both emerged naturally from circumstances each player faced. Yet together they created one of the most compelling narratives heading into Wimbledon, where rankings would soon collide with something that statistics alone could never fully measure: the extraordinary power of belief carried by millions of devoted supporters. That belief became even more significant when the Wimbledon draw was finally revealed. Tournament brackets often create fascinating storylines, but this one seemed almost scripted for maximum intrigue. Sabalenka occupied the top half of the draw, while Eala landed in the opposite section, meaning the two could not face each other unless they both survived all the way to the championship match. For tennis fans, it offered the irresistible possibility of watching two very different stories develop simultaneously before potentially colliding on the sport's grandest grass court stage. Looking beyond that challenge, the possibility of meeting Serena Williams in the second round immediately became one of the tournament's hottest talking points. Whether or not that matchup ultimately materialized, the mere prospect demonstrated how dramatically Eala's status had changed. Only a short time earlier, she was hoping for opportunities to test herself against tennis legends. Now, the tennis world was eagerly discussing those encounters as realistic possibilities rather than distant dreams.
Let's have a listen to Alex reflecting on one of the previous two occasions that she played Iga Swiatek in Miami. This is me talking to Alex last year about her match.
How has life changed since that Miami run for you, or has it not changed at all?
A lot has changed technically, but I don't really feel... At the same time, not much has changed. It's hard to explain. I've had the same work ethic since
Former professionals noticed the shift just as quickly as the fans did. Greg Rusedski, a former US Open finalist and one of Britain's most respected tennis voices, suggested that Wimbledon could become the tournament where Eala truly announced herself to the wider sporting world. His reasoning extended beyond the quality of her tennis. He pointed to something equally powerful: the remarkable support following her from tournament to tournament. Experienced analysts understand that confidence in tennis rarely exists in isolation. A player feeding off thousands of passionate supporters often discovers an extra level of composure during the biggest moments, and Eala seemed to thrive whenever that energy surrounded her. When respected figures such as Anne Keothavong and Greg Rusedski independently arrive at similar conclusions, their opinions carry weight because they are rooted in decades of observing Grand Slam competition. That unusual advantage transformed ordinary outside courts into electric arenas and turned neutral spectators into curious newcomers eager to witness what all the excitement was about. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this remarkable rise was that Eala herself refused to be swept away by the growing attention. She consistently approached victories and defeats with the same calm perspective, speaking about improvements still needed rather than celebrating headlines.
I'm out of the 2026 Australian Open, where there were extraordinary scenes this morning as Filipino player Alexandra Eala was greeted by hundreds of Filipino fans during her practice session out the back of Melbourne Park. Eala is number 49 in the world, and she's really captivated the hearts and minds of the Filipino community here in Melbourne after she became the first Filipino player to win a Grand Slam match at the US Open in 2025. It's fair to say that most players would have found that scene a little confronting given the number of people who swarmed her for autographs and photos after her practice session, but she took it really well. She stopped to say hi to the fans, and then she left the practice.
That steady mindset suggested her greatest strength might not be her forehand or movement on grass at all, but her ability to remain grounded while the spotlight around her became brighter with every passing tournament. That level-headed approach became especially clear after one of her more frustrating defeats on grass. Following an early exit in Bad Homburg, Eala resisted every opportunity to make excuses. She did not criticize the court conditions, complain about scheduling, or suggest that the growing media attention had become a distraction. Instead, she simply acknowledged that the conditions had been difficult for her game and explained that she had done the best she could with what she had on the day. It was the response of a player focused on solutions rather than sympathy, and only a few days later she proved those words were more than polite sportsmanship by bouncing back to lift the Birmingham Trophy. That resilience explains why so many people believe this story extends far beyond one impressive Wimbledon campaign. Whether Alex Eala reaches the second week at Wimbledon or not, one thing has already become unmistakably clear. Every tournament she enters now feels larger than before, because she is no longer competing only for herself. She is carrying the hopes, pride, and unmistakable voice of an entire nation wherever she plays.